Hello again, everybody. Gary Ferman and Matt Shodell here, and today we are talking about an interesting topic. It is where the Miami Hurricanes stand today in the college football landscape. And Matt, this is a very complicated subject because you've had a lot going on just starting in South Florida with the South Florida sports landscape, with the Miami Heat going to the NBA Finals, the Florida Panthers going to the Stanley Cup, the Marlins having a stunning season to this point so far as they get to the midway point. So the Miami Hurricanes have not, well, other than, of course, like the basketball team reaching the Final Four, I guess I should include that. But the Miami Hurricanes football program has kind of like been laying low here for the past several months while all this goes on around the Canes. And in the past, the most uttered phrase in South Florida sports, or at least certainly one of them, would have been the Canes are back or the U is back. Miami would not have to do very much to get people to say the Canes are back. I mean, I remember going back those simple victories in 2017, the miraculous wins over Florida State and Georgia Tech. It didn't matter that they came down to the last play to beat very average football teams. I remember Mark Jones's sign off on the network broadcast, Carroll City, stand up, Coconut Grove, stand up, Opelika, stand up, the Canes are back. To me, it was an absolutely phenomenal sign off on the national broadcast that day. So, people want to proclaim that the Canes are back. They want to say the Canes are relevant again in college football. Miami being Miami is good for college football. But as we stand here today, coming off a 5-7 season, going into year 2 of Mario Cristobal, I don't think anybody, can common sensibly say that the Canes are back. And I don't think Mario Cristobal is trying to say that either. Mario is a let me show you first kind of head coach. And for that reason, I think the program's been laying kind of low. You even look at the best player, Tyler Van Dyke, has disappeared off the radar on a national level. A year ago, they were talking about him being a first-round draft pick. This year, he's hardly even mentioned. They can list the top 25 quarterbacks in college football. They leave Tyler Van Dyke off. They list the top quarterbacks in the ACC. They put Tyler Van Dyke way down the list. There is not a lot of respect for this program right now, Matt. Miami is not in anywhere close to where it wants to be in the college football landscape. Your thoughts on that? And then we'll talk about what they got to do this year to change that.
Well, it's like, to me, it's like the snow leopard. Like, when will the snow leopard be back, right? It's an endangered species. How do you define that it's back?
Just I saw your brain working there while I was talking. I knew you'd come up with something crazy.
Just because it's off the endangered species list? I don't know. The passenger pigeon is gone. Unless we genetically engineer some new passenger pigeons. I mean, I have to send my mail through the post office now, which is way slower than using passenger pigeons. It's unfortunate they're extinct. But, the definition of something being back is different for everybody, which is my point. People proclaimed after the Notre Dame game, like you were talking about, like they're back. Miami's back. Miami starts 10-0. They're back. They lose the last 3 games, in pretty horrific fashion, and it was all a mirage. They'd won, 3 earlier games barely, that they probably should have lost or could have lost. So to me, my definition of when Miami will be back is when the snow leopard is back. When the snow leopard's back, Miami will be back. But it's seriously, it's about just as hard a place to be as the snow leopard, because it's been a progression of 19 years. A species doesn't get endangered or extinct overnight. It takes years and decades. This has been 2 decades of failure. You can't expect 2 decades of failure, just like a species doesn't pop back overnight. So to me, the definition of being back isn't something that could happen this year or even next year or even the year after. It's something that has to be able to be propagated upon itself. So when we see that cycle of multiple years, I'd say 3 to me personally, 3 straight years of making the playoffs, with 12 teams, right, is going to be in the playoffs. 3 straight years of making the playoffs, to me, that's Miami being back, because that's what Miami used to be. You know, that's when the snow leopard used to be roaming around eating rabbits or whatever the hell they eat. Like, that's when Miami's back, is when you have a huge population for the snow leopards, or a huge amount of wins for Miami in this case, for multiple years, where you can say, okay, this species is not going to be endangered anymore. This species is just fine and is thriving. And the only way to do that is with a multiple year window to really get a view, biologically or extraterrestrially, or whatever you want to say, of where things stand. Like, this year, they could win every single game. I won't be saying Miami's back. Everybody else will be saying it. I will not, because I've seen enough times where a program will have one good year and fall right back in the sewer. And, you have one great year, maybe because a quarterback and a receiver are this amazing combo. Maybe the other teams you're playing that year just aren't as good as people thought they would be. And then the following year, the roof falls in, the ceiling caves in, whatever it is, the floor falls out beneath your feet, whatever expression Gary Ferman likes to use, and you're back at square zero. So to me, 3 years of playoffs, 3 years of 10+ wins, because that's what it'll take to be in the playoffs every year, and Miami will be back. Like, that's my definition. Everyone else will have a different definition, I'm sure, but that's just me.
All right. So let's remove the Matt Shodell negative Nancy.
It's not negative. It's just, that's just my definition.
Ridiculous standards, whatever you want to call
it. Those were the old standards. The old standards, you knew they were going to win 10 games every year because they were doing it for multiple years in a row.
What you're saying is the Hurricanes have to win 10 games for 3 straight seasons before anybody out there on the college football landscape can utter the words, the Canes are back.
Yeah. Do you want to be fooled again? Do you? I mean, do you want to fall into that envelope and have it sealed and never be able to get out again? And then that's the end of your hope? Because after 1 or 2 good years, the ceiling falls in on year 3. Like, you've already proclaimed they're back, and now obviously they're not. But I think after 3 years, it's self-propagating. After 3 years of complete success with the same head coach, with the same assistants, whatever it is, at that point it's rolling along. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, like what Miami used to have. Recruits see it, right? Oh, wow, look what this program's doing. Look at you have to have NFL guys to win 3 straight years. Look at the NFL guys they're turning out. Look at the progress this program's made. I want to be part of that. 1 year doesn't do that. 2 years doesn't really do that, right? Because it could be a 1-off, a 2-off. There's no such thing as a 3-off. So 3 years, that's my standard, and I'm sticking by it.
All right. Well, let's take this thing back now to this year. All right. We'll agree that there is nothing that is going to happen in the 2023 football season that will justify that phrase being uttered. The Canes are back. Okay, I'll meet you on that one. Okay, even if they win 10 games this year, I will agree that that's not enough to say the Canes are back. 10 wins in 1 year. Okay, we can argue about the 3 years down the road. It doesn't really matter. Let's get to 1 year first. And nobody really thinks that the Canes are winning 10 games this year. So for the purposes of our conversation here, then what can this team realistically do to begin altering the reputation and the perspective on the national level? I'm watching, I saw an On3 ranking the other day talking about NIL, okay? A year ago, Miami would have been number 1 in the country, NIL. Now they got Miami number 5. They say there's 4 other programs around America that have a better NIL situation. Obviously, some of the it's different this year, no doubt. Miami's not just getting these elite players like they were a year ago and out of the transfer portal. Although I would argue they got Javion Cohen, who was certainly somebody that commanded a pretty reasonable NIL deal, I'm sure. And there's other guys. Matt Lee, I know, commanded a decent NIL deal. Maybe, I guess the better way to describe it is John Ruiz is not being flashy like he was a year ago. So he's not getting the national, buzz that he was getting a year ago that made Miami number 1 on many lists as the top NIL situation in college football. Well, now they got Miami number 5. So, you're seeing a steady progression of Miami dropping down in stature. Tyler Van Dyke, everyone was touting him as a first-round draft pick a year ago. They were calling him one of the best passing quarterbacks in the country. He had an injury-riddled season. It was a disaster. The whole thing was a mess, okay? Now all of a sudden he can't play anymore. He's not even in anybody's top 25. So that's a progressive downslide in respect for the program, I think. And so to me, this season becomes about starting to regain some of that respect. Would you agree with that?
I mean, you went on and on and on. I wasn't really paying attention. Yeah, look, gaining respect, you don't gain respect in one season anyway, especially where Miami's coming from. But, I keep saying this, everyone says how negative I am. Like, I keep saying they're going to be a playoff team. I mean, there's no way that they can fail, because if they fail, honestly, there's nothing else left to do. Mario Cristobal knows what he's doing. Mario Cristobal has been there. He's done it. He was at a really good Oregon program. He rebuilt that. It rebuilt FIU. He's at Alabama. Like, honestly, if he can't do it, I don't know who can.
Yeah, failure.
And to his credit, last year when the wrong coaches were on the staff, he recognized it and he got rid of everybody except for the two guys he already knew from Oregon and one other guy, the DB coach, Jimmy Ladai. He brought in all new coaches. He recognizes when there's problems and he fixes them. Unlike, some other people, other coaches in the past who have just sort of let it ride for another year. Well, let's see, maybe it'll be different. He cuts the cord. When he recognizes something's not right, he fixes it, which is great. So, you can it's fair to criticize Mario for making the wrong decision in the first place, but he gets way more credit for fixing his own mistakes, because it's easy for a coach to say, I didn't make a mistake. He's still here. Maybe next year will be better. And then I could say, oh, look, I was right all along. It's easy for a coach to do that. It's easy for me to say, Miami's going to win 10 games this year because no one ever criticizes me. But you know what? Like Mario Cristobal, I make the tough decisions. And my tough decision is to tell you all what I honestly believe instead of just this fairyland stuff everyone wants to hear. And, again, like, Miami will earn respect to me with multiple years. So it's not the same. Being back and earning respect are different. I think you earn respect probably with 2 seasons, 2 really good seasons, not even playoff seasons, but you win, 9 games this year, maybe 9 or 10 games next year. Like, you're earning respect. You're one of the better programs in the ACC and one of the better programs in the country, but you're not back.
Well, you can't be back until you get respect first.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's fair. So, yeah, I think the respect certainly comes quicker than the being back. But for a program like Miami, if we're talking about a different program, I'd say we're back. I could say we're back by winning 9 games for 3 straight for some other programs. But Miami came from such an elite place as really the top program in multiple different decades for long stretches of periods of time. Like, that's where the bar has been set for being back at Miami, because if you're going back to what it was. Like, that's what being back means. Being back doesn't mean, okay, well, we only won 7 games or 8 games almost every year the last 19 years. So being back, let's win 9 games and then we'll say we're back. Like, no, being back is back to what you were. Like, that by definition is being back. Being back to what you are, that's the part that's not in there. And what they were was winning 12 games every year, was going undefeated and playing for national championships every year. So that's what being back is to me. That's why I'm saying it's 3 years in a row. You can't just go 1 or 2 years that are good and then have an off year the third year. Like, that's not self-propagating. It used to be self-propagating where recruits were begging to come to Miami. Now Miami,
Georgia's doing. They're back. Georgia's back.
Right. Now
Alabama's been back.
Correct.
Ohio State has been back.
Yeah, but we all know this. This is not news.
No, now I'm agreeing with you.
Those 3 programs you just mentioned, recruits are begging to go there. Miami is begging recruits to come here. So the switch flips or the flip switches. I don't know which one. The switch flips when recruits are begging to come here again. And when they're begging to come here because they want to be part of something that's already great. They're not begging to come here to help turn around a 5-7 team or a team that 2 years ago was 5-7. That's not what recruits want to do. Recruits nowadays, they want to already be part of something that's great. And that's just the bottom line to me. Like, yeah, you got to earn respect first, but they're going to get there. Like, I'm not concerned about it. As negative as it might seem, like, I just don't think they're going to be real good this year, but I think they're going to get back in the next 4 years. I think starting next year, they'll be getting back. That'll be the beginning of getting back. Year 1 of getting back. You want to call it that? 2024 is year 1 of getting back. Let's go. Let's retitle the headline in today's story.
Well, getting respect back is definitely an important thing this year. I see 2 guys as the key to that. Offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson. He was brought here to put an explosive offense on the field. They do have a lot of decent pieces. There's not anybody that's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, but there are some decent pieces that he has to work with. So he is number 1. in terms of getting Miami some respect this year. I think number 2 would be Tyler Van Dyke, because he's got to execute that offense. He's got to put up big numbers. He's got to get himself back on the landscape. He is the quarterback. He's the face of the program. He is the guy everybody is going to be looking at. So he's got to have a great season. Shannon Dawson has to have a great season. That will have a major impact on recruiting, which obviously has a major impact on whether the Canes are ever going to be back. So I think that puts in perspective where Miami stands right now on the college football landscape. If you like the show, like our YouTube channel, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube and growing our audience. And more so than anything, please, 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 if you are not yet a subscriber at canesport.com, get on over to our website, join our community, become part of our everyday lives at canesport.com, and we will do our best to continue to enhance your fan experience, because your subscriptions allow us to do what we do every single day. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time, everybody.